Reporting. Now, what happens if you confront an intruder in your house? The law currently says that you can use reasonable force against them, but the recent prosecution of Munir Hussain, who attacked a man who'd broken into his home, has thrust that law back into the centre of debate. Well, the Conservatives say they'll look at changing it to allow all but grossly disproportionate force. But what does that mean exactly? Well, with me is the Shadow Home Secretary, Chris Grayling, and Michael Wolkind QC, the barrister who defended both Munir Hussain and the Norfolk farmer Tony Martin, who was prosecuted in a similar case. And both of you, thanks very much for coming in. Now to Michael Wolkind to see what you make of that as a way of dealing with the law. Do you think the law does need to be changed, first of all?
Probably not. The law already recognises that people react a certain way in the heat of the moment. But grossly disproportionate is a horrible idea. So imagine, and I'm not sure whether this would allow people to respond outside the home, or this is just for homeowners. If I'm outside the home and someone tries to abduct my child, why shouldn't I have the same rights to defend my child there as I would inside the home? And so I managed to tackle the criminal, and I get him to the ground, and I kick him once, and that's reasonable, and I kick him twice, and that's understandable. 3 times forgivable, 4 times debatable, 5 times disproportionate, 6 times it's very disproportionate, 7 times extremely disproportionate, in come the Tories test, 8 times grossly disproportionate. It's a horrible test.
But don't you think that it may be difficult to define in law, but in terms of public sentiment, that is, what Chris Grayling has just outlined is exactly where the public is. You ought to be able to use all force necessary.
Well, some people think that. Not everyone thinks that. It sounds like state-sponsored revenge. I don't understand why sentencing should take place in the home. Why can't it go through the courts? Why can't the jury, as they always do, decide what's reasonable?
Well, what about that's a separate point as well, is this a matter for the police to decide or for juries to decide?
Well, juries decide at the moment whether the action of the householder or any victim is reasonable, and that's how it should be. Sentencing for the judge, for the police originally whether to prosecute, and there are cases where they don't prosecute, where the imbalance is so clear they don't prosecute to begin with.
But your client, Munir Hussain, does he feel that the law has worked well for him because he was originally given a custodial sentence?
He was, and that judge was sympathetic and went as far as any judge at first instance could do. It needed the Lord Chief Justice to come in and to give mercy to him.
But then if it requires the Lord Chief Justice, and there's going to be almost an established thing where someone uses self-defence, they get sent down to prison, and then it has to go through the appeal procedure, and the Lord Chief Justice kind of on a white stallion rides to the rescue.
No, it won't need that every time. Trial judges have now heard how the Lord Chief Justice approached this, and if there's another case where circumstances are so extreme, where someone has a character as impeccable as Munir Hussain and suffered as much as he did. It wasn't just a burglary, threats to kill, false imprisonment.
OK, we must leave it there, Mr. Wolkind. Thank you.